Okay, everyone, I think everybody's got into the room now, so we'll start the seminar. My name is Siobhan Lavelle, and I'm a member of the ASHA Executive Committee. I'd like to welcome you to tonight's seminar, which is part of the ASHA online series for 2024. I'm calling in from the land of the Darug and Gundungurra people, and ASHA acknowledges the traditional owners of country and recognises their continuing connections to land, sea, sky, water, and community. Recognising where we stand is but one of many acts acknowledging past injustices and committing to acts of reconciliation. We pay our respects to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures, to other First Nations peoples on the lands on which we meet this evening, and to elders past and present. Tonight we've got Bill Edwards to speak with us. As it says here on his opening slide, Bill works for Heritage New Zealand as an area manager in Northland, and he's going to speak with us about navigation and how we as humans perceive the world around us, looking at Maori and European perspectives. So over to you, Bill. Thank you.
Oh, kia ora, and thank you. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Call Bill Edwards Takawaingua. Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Bill Edwards, and I would describe myself as an archaeologist, but also as a water person. I sort of enjoy sailing. I've done a bit of sailing and boating and fishing and sort of as well as terrestrial navigation. It's always interested me when I've been out on the water how we do wayfinding, and what I began to realize, and it took me a long time, was that our perceptions of the world vary immensely, really, but they all come up with a set of tools, and those tools are really important for finding our way around. So what I've done here is basically, hopefully, just wanting to give an outline of my talk, which is how humans navigate the world with the focus on the maritime environment, how we model our world and navigate our way using different tools, and the intersection of Te Maori and European. And I'll be using case studies of those early explorers, Cook and Dufresne. I could have used Tasman, of which the sea that not only separates us but connects us, but I've used Cook and Dufresne because they came into the area in which we live here, the Bay of Islands, and looking at the archaeology of contact of those people and where navigation is heading and what tools are we using today. So it's a sort of a mix of a bit of I suppose not only navigation but a bit of philosophy and a bit of archaeology. So I hope it's of interest to you. So I guess it all starts here. Well, we believe it starts from here, out of Africa. And we have pulses of people, and these pulses of people move when conditions mean that they can cross some of the water masses, like across here in the Red Sea, and other areas heading north through the Sinai and into Europe, and other areas heading west. And I've divided them into groups of people, some headed north and some headed south. And so as the people that headed south came through across into China, we think about 80,000 years ago, and down through the islands and got into Australia. I wouldn't argue the date, but there'll be people here much more. But 50,000 years ago, maybe 60,000 years ago, people arrived in Australia, and so we have the spread of Homo sapiens spreading across the globe, using terrestrial methods of navigation, following probably coastlines, also valley systems, mountain passes, and also where they could crossing bodies of water. But then they hit this, Te Mauna Nui a Kiwa, the Pacific. And as you can see, it's about a third of the planet. It's huge. And some people see it as a great empty mass, but for another group of people, they saw it as a place of opportunity. They saw it as a place where they could explore and find resources, but they needed the tools to do that. And so how did they do it? They used this thing here, which is the brain. the brain is an amazing piece of equipment, not only because it means we can store knowledge, but we can also transmit knowledge. And the transmission of knowledge through using our brain to other people in our clan group and wider means that it becomes a very powerful object in the way that we perceive the world. So what we have in Polynesia, these are modern, we call them waka horua or double hill waka. They're not driven by paddling, they're driven by sails. And these waka are the pinnacle, I think, of the southern peoples when they came and confronted Te Whanau Kiwa, the Pacific Ocean. They had to devise a system of traveling it. And some of them were made from larger logs. Here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, we have waka that are made from large logs, whereas in other places they would use large logs that were stitched together. Everyone hear me okay? Yeah. Here we have what's called the Polynesian Triangle. I'm just checking that everyone's there. The Polynesian Triangle. I actually don't think it should be called the Polynesian Triangle. It should actually be called the Polynesian Circle, because here we can see the bottom is Aotearoa, New Zealand. We know that Polynesians went across into the coast of the Americas, because we know that Kumara came down into Polynesia. They probably went further north, and we know that some people also went across into Madagascar. So the Polynesian Triangle is a bit of a misnomer, but that's the model we have at the moment. So what was the tools that the Southern whānau used? So the use of narrative to pass on knowledge. Narrative is a very powerful tool. Basically, it allows you to pass on knowledge to other people, whether it be through stories about places or ways in order to navigate to places. The use of analogy, the use of metaphor. It's a very, very powerful tool, and it's a tool that has been used by humans for thousands of years. Also, there's pattern recognition of the stars, and down here we call it Te Whanau Marama, the family of stars. And there's two different types of looking at pattern recognition. Some people can immediately pick up a pattern very quickly, whereas other people weave it with the idea of passing on a narrative. So this star is connected to this star. We have stories like Orion's belt in the northern hemisphere. Down in the south here, we have other stories of Matariki, the shimmering eyes of Matariki. But all these places are stories in order to let us look at the natural world and explain it. And as well as the natural world, we've got to understand how it interrelates to us. So we look at the way that for instance, birds would fly, wading birds would fly, and we know they're wading birds because they've got long legs. They've got to land somewhere, so if you follow those wading birds, you can probably find a way to land. There's also where we have large tracts of water where marine mammals pass, and again, we can find that there. And we've got a conceptual framework of a navigator being at the center of the world coming towards you. So this is really important. When you're in the waka, you are not viewing the world from the outside, you're viewing the world coming towards you. So all these inputs are coming towards you. So we have culture, tradition, and science embodied into navigation. So where are we? We're here in the Bay of Islands in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and here's our colleagues over here in Australia. And what we're going to be looking at here is some early Polynesian settlement. I'm just going to stop sharing for a second and just see that everyone's there. Okay, people are there. That's great. I'll continue. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure that people were there. So what we have here is an early Polynesian settlement of Moturua. and in a place called
We've lost
Manga.
your screen, Bill.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah.
How's that? Got it
Yeah,
now?
it's
Yeah,
back now. Thank you.
good. Sorry about that. So here we have a small island called Motorua. And for those that came to the Asha conference a couple of years ago, we went and visited this island. This place here is called Mangahawea. But the interesting thing is we have names that are associated with Polynesia. Moturangiatia. Rangiatia is a very important marae in a place called Raiatea in French Polynesia. And so all these names, there's another one, Hikurangi. Hikurangi is a mountain. And we get these names throughout Polynesia. So there's this, not only the names are here, we also have such things as uh, the people. Up here is Matu Clendon. He's a descendant of the first people that arrived in this island around about 1320. And we know that because we did some archaeological work here. Here you can see the archaeologists here digging and some more here. And what we found was basically the site was used in the very early period within a generation of people arriving in Aotearoa, because we found bones of moa, extinct moa. We also found large mammals, seal. But the other thing we also found were artifacts, which are Eastern Polynesian. Here we have a Polynesian tattooing chisel for marking the skin. And this is called a pā kāwai, or a lure. And you can see the holes that are drilled here. And on the other end, there's also holes. And this has been used as a pendant. So this is a remarkable site which shows the people that arrived from the south coming down and inhabiting this new land at the beginning of the 13th century. Then we have another group of people. I'm calling the northern people, the northern whanau, northern family. And they arrived here, well, Tasman arrived here in 1642, but because we're looking at the Bay of Islands, the people that came and stayed and had an impact, or more of an impact, were Cook and Marion de Freyne. And how did they do it? So they used, narrative is still used, but writing is being used to pass on knowledge. So writing becomes important. There's also pattern recognition, like the southern peoples that are, and the idea of, and we're weaving stories around there, but more important, we're using these patterns of stars in order to understand where we're going. So when we live in the southern hemisphere, the Southern Cross always tells us where south is. But there's less reliance on the natural world, and the use of tools such as a compass, always facing towards magnetic north, a sextant for measuring, a chronometer for timing, so you get the idea of distance over time, and nautical almanacs, which had a series of tables that you could easily work from. So the conceptual framework, it removes the navigator from the world and divides the world into a grid of longitude and latitude. And when you've got time, and when you've got the sun, and when you've got the stars, you can work out where you are. So you've got cultural tradition and science embodied into navigation. So after hundreds of thousands of years pulsing out of Africa, the last meeting place of the maritime navigators was Aotearoa. And the southern family, or whanau, had arrived in Aotearoa in the early 14th century, while the northern family had arrived in the 17th century. And I think this is incredible that you get two groups of people meeting in a place after literally hundreds of thousands of years. And I would say that we're still working it all out, like most people when different cultures meet. Now, if we go into the sort of historical archaeological part, I suppose we'll call it, this is Great Britain and Cook's voyage. Basically, he needed to sail to Tahiti to chart the transit of Venus. And this is important because you can then calculate the distance between Earth and the Sun. If you know that, you can calculate where you are. But he was also carrying secret orders, and that secret orders was go south. We want to find out what that lump of land is down there, and we want to see if we can make some money and get it for ourselves, and also learn along the way, because he had a series of scientists, artists, and the idea was to get a really good idea, get some intelligence. So they came into what we know as Taitakurau, Northland, and they came into this little place here, which is called the Bay of Islands. Well, he called it the Bay of Islands. We call it Ipiripi. And here we can see this sign here. That's the little anchor which they anchored there in the Bay of Islands. You'll also notice the way that the track of around the map is bouncing backwards and forwards. This is because of contrary winds and currents that they encountered when they're trying to get around North Cape or Cape Reinga. So this is where we are. You can see there's this is the Bay of Islands. This is the northern part here, large bay, and in here is these scatters of islands. It's quite a small, and this is the area in which these early explorers operated. This is the place where we also found the very first or the earliest Maori explorers coming into. So the reason for that is out here is the huge Te Whanau Marama, the South Pacific. And as you come into here, these small islands are the places which have good resources and water, which is vitally important for anybody. We're extremely lucky in that because of the weather, Cook stayed here a bit longer than he was intending to. He anchored here, you can see the anchor there, and every day he went out, they kept the boat there, but they went out on long boats, and you can see these 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. These are soundings. And these soundings are vital because what they do is when you look at the log of the ship and the soundings, they become a breadcrumb trail of where people went on every day. So you're able to very quickly work out which day they went, where they went to, and then when you look into the logs and also interrogate, we were extremely lucky to have a number of matuas and kuias with us, old men and women from the local tribes in the area who are able to give oral histories of what happened there. So together with this and also those oral histories, we're able to build up a much deeper understanding of what was happening there in 1769. And what we did is we basically put it together, and we have a map here which shows what happened on every day, where they went to, and some of the main points of some of the encounters that they had, and that allowed us to sort of look at a landscape at a much wider point, but also allowed us to focus very closely as well. We also have drawings. This is a drawing by Parkinson of Te Kuku, who was a rangatira who was wounded in an affray over a mooring buoy. I could talk a lot about that, but I won't because I've run out of time. This is also a pā on a small island called Motu Arahia, and it's very good because it shows you can still see that pā when you go sailing past it on a yacht. Not like that, not with the palisades up, but you can still see the earthworks. And if we go back to the Pickersgill chart here, you can see something there which says watering place. Now that water is a very, very important focus for people coming out from the deep ocean, because they not only they need water for drinking, but they need it for their food as well. A lot of salted food that needs to be watered down. So water was a real driver. So it's amazing that in this chart we have a pā there, and the next thing we have is a watering place. So that shows the importance of the watering place. And here's a drawing that was done by Sporing. This is not of this place. This is further down the east coast of the North Island, but it shows the barrels being floated out, then rolled ashore. And in this little island, Moturoa Island, we found this, which is a square cut hole. The description of where it was pretty good. There's a rock face here, and you can just see a little ditch here, and it ran into there. And just off to the side here is a deeper stream, but it's brackish water. So it would be very easy to fill a barrel and then just roll it down the brackish stream out to sea. Now, I would say that this has probably been used and reused multiple times. So it's a bit like Grandad's axe. It was probably used because that watering place was known to whalers and other voyages that came out here in the 19th century as well. So I would say it's probably been very heavily modified. So but that is the place where they got the water. Now we're going to go on to France, Marion He was a French privateer, East Indian captain and explorer. And there was Bougainville had been into Tahiti. He was enraptured with Tahiti. And he took Arutura back to France. And after a while, Arutura became a bit tired of being in France, and the Centre of Retention asked if he could go back. So this presented the French with an opportunity to load 2 ships of the expedition, and they took a lot of trade goods there, hoping to trade, because by this was 1772, but Cook hadn't got back yet to Europe. No, it was actually 1771. And so anyway, they sailed down around Cape of Good Hope and ended up bashing their ships together, which meant they had to come into the Bay of Islands. They came into Tasmania, as you'll know, for a bit, but they couldn't find suitable water timber, and then they came into the Bay of Islands, and there they were there for about 6 weeks, 8 weeks actually, long time. Cook had only been there for 7 days. These guys were here for 8 weeks. They had a huge effect on the history of New Zealand, which I think we're only really beginning to understand a bit. But this is a picture of Maori and European, and that's Arutura. And this is the chart of the Bay of Islands done by the French. And Maori and European and 21 of his crew were killed towards the end of their stay in the Bay of Islands. So the French did what we call utu, or revenge. Utu is a Maori word, and they killed probably about 200 Maori in the Bay of Islands. But they left this legacy of these charts. Unfortunately, the logs disappeared with the death of Marion and with the voyage coming back. We haven't been able to find the log of Marion Frame, the ship's logs, whereas with Cook we have good copies of the ship's logs. So it meant that some of our more detailed work was a bit harder to do. This is an example of what we did do. Is we named all the places. This is just taken off the French map. So as you can see, it's indigenous villages, fortified with palisades. These are the words that they used. Western Channel, Assassination Cove, where Marion and Frense was there. There you can see the 2 anchors there where they were anchored. So they were. There's actually, if I must say, there's a huge body of research that could be done here. We've been looking on this island here, which they handily call Maori Island. We call it Muturua. But over in here, there was a series of logging camps, probably some roads that were dug that became abandoned, and no one's looked at those because they're on private land. So there's actually a very good opportunity for doing some more spatially based archaeology in the Bay of Islands. What we did do is some of the charts we had were quite useful. This is a map of the island, and because they were staying in these bays here, they got pretty detailed about where the bays were. You can see these 2 watercourses here, and we've also got a hospital here and a forge here. So what we did is we did a bit of an archaeological survey, and what we found was the probable forge site, and we found the terrace, which is probably the hospital, and there is some intact archaeology of these very first European explorers still in the landscape, which is incredible. Here we can see what we believe is it just looks like a hole in the ground, a wet hole in the ground. But if you look closely, you can see there's a drain coming out of it that runs down this way. These have been built up. And when we ran a metal detector around here, we got a high concentration of metal slag. So this, we're pretty certain, was what's called a pit furnace for bending iron. They'd have a pipe into there pumping air, and they would get it hot enough. We haven't excavated it because we don't want to destroy it. We just want to leave it, and maybe through non-invasive methods we might be able to find some more information. But at the moment, we're just leaving it there. So I'm going to briefly talk about the third wave. The third wave is about what are we doing now with navigation. So the use of narrative and writing to pass on knowledge. I'm discussing a narrative here with a bit of writing, so we're still doing it. The conceptual framework, that navigator is at the center. We do that with our GPS. We're always at the center when we turn on our GPS, and we do it when we're extending ourselves from our planet as well. We got the observation of star paths. So again, we're using the stars, but we're using optical instruments to increase them. We have much better, and of course, we're firing our optical instruments into space, and because of like the James Webb, etc. So we're getting much better optical observation of our star paths. We're also using other tools such as radio waves to measure the time and distance, which is very similar to what we're doing with time and distance when we're doing latitude and longitude. And we're also using gravity to power spacecraft, so an understanding of physics, how we can fling things. But all of this knowledge is based on what we've learned over thousands of years of accumulated knowledge. You know, it's not from one source. And when you look at the way that our brain works, we all view the world in slightly different ways, but we all come up with tools in order to explain and look at our world. So what does it mean? Well, this is Homo sapiens' first interstellar object being flung into space. This is Voyager 1, which is now 6.4 billion miles away. And that's the view of what they just took one picture, they turned it around and took a photo, and it's known as the blue dot. That little dot there is a picture of our planet. And so if I could just finish off to say, we're all in this waka together. So these are the people. I'd just like to acknowledge them. Dame Salmond, we've done a number of trips with her. Matu Clendon, Robert Willoughby, Deb Rawiri, who was at the marae that some of you people visited. Rawiri Hetaraka, he's a master carver. James, my colleague. Jack Kemp, a very wonderful chap, a volunteer. John Booth, marine scientist. Ross Ramsey, a geologist. John McInerney, a Francophile. Manukau Henare, a wonderful person that understood tikanga. Dr. Bill Guthrie, a social scientist, and others there. But most of all, of course, my family allowing me the time and the space and undertake research and my time away from work. Kia ora, and thank you very much. Okay, I'll stop sharing.
Thanks, Bill. That was fantastic. I ask people if you have a question to either raise your hand, or you can pop a question into the chat if you feel like typing out your question. So I'll give you a little bit of time to pop things into the chat, but I might start with one, Bill, noting that you said that some of those potentially, really significant and early sites are on private property, and
Yep.
also noting that you said the forge had been left unexcavated, which I think is a good thing.
Yep.
Is there any follow-up work planned? Like what's likely to happen next? Nothing or something, or?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. I mean, we've got some irons with the French. Some French archaeologists are pretty keen to come out here to look at the French sites, especially. And I think that we have been working with the private property owner to get access onto the land. We have some contacts there. So once we can negotiate some good access onto the land, I think that's going to improve our research abilities to answer some really good landscape style questions, which we haven't been able to do. We've concentrated a lot on the island. We've done some, some archaeological work there for about 3 years on Mangahawer on the very early Maori site. All we've done with the European stuff is basically noted it and brought it to people's attention. And it's on Department of Conservation land, so it's protected anyway. So I think the point is really that it's there, it's not going to get damaged, and it allows opportunities for further research.
Yes, especially if the logbooks turn up.
Yeah, yeah.
And they might be buried in some archive somewhere.
They probably are. Yeah.
Could be one of those exciting discoveries that we read about from time to time.
Could be, yeah.
Has anyone else got a question? I'm not seeing any raised hands. If you can't work out how to raise your hand, you do it with the reactions button down the bottom of the screen. Don't see any questions. Is everyone muted by you, Ellie?
Yes.
Okay.
But they can unmute themselves.
Yeah, but they could raise their hand as well, and then we could unmute them. Yeah.
Please ask questions, friends.
That would be my vicious thing, wouldn't it? You can ask a question, but you're muted, so you can't.
Power. Yeah, sorry.
Well, you must have floored them all, Bill, but
I don't think so.
Okay. We have a question in the chat here from Brett Gribble. I don't know if you can see the chat, Bill. Can you see?
Yeah.
Right.
Where the French buried or died at sea. Look, the French were 21 of them from Marion to Frense. They were killed on the land, and they were basically cut up and shared up as meat. And it's because they were what that means is their mana was taken from them by doing that. They were eaten.
So there aren't grave sites.
Well, there possibly is. There's yeah. There may have been some scurvy sailors that died, and there's a possibility there's 2 grave sites there, but that hasn't been confirmed.
Can you see that?
Yeah, I was wondering if there are other artifacts in the other islands in the bay. Yeah, there are. It's full of them, Avril. It's a place of people. It's one of those contested landscapes. It's a place with a lot of maritime and forestry resources. So as a result of that, it means that there's been quite a lot of contesting of that landscape. So it means there are a lot of artifacts. And there's also a lot of parasite still visible on the landscape and gardening areas. It's got good soils. So, and it's also a place which is really where everybody kind of washes up, really. When you come across the Pacific Ocean, that's the first big bay that opens up, and it's got the resources. So it's a place that's always been used. Lots of artifacts, tons of stuff. Another one from Brett. Yeah, look, we're contested spaces because people arrived at the same time. I think what happened is that there were different groups in different parts of Northland that moved in. So what happens is that there were early tribes that got into here and then were assimilated or moved further south. And it was a contested landscape up until the last big war between Taonga and Te Whanau there was 1835. So yeah, there was always groups wanting to get into that space, and especially when later on when Europeans came into that space and started trading, that also sent up an imbalance where people that weren't getting that trading couldn't get hold of muskets. So it meant that the people that got hold of the muskets were able to go down further south and have a series of wars, basically. So yeah, not only was there competition before Europeans arrived, it also exacerbated in that very early phase of contact as well. It's an interesting landscape for archaeologists and people interested in human history.
And with the maps that you did, Bill, were they kind of given to the local community or
Yeah,
everybody,
yeah,
or yeah?
yeah. Basically, what we did is we worked uh, in conjunction with the people from that area, and we basically handed over all the research material to them, and they put it up on their website. So, yep. And what we're hoping to do, or one of the long-term visions is for young people to get involved with heritage tourism and sort of take people out into these places and explain their histories through these places, because all the landscape has names, all those names relate to things and events, and it's just one layer of information. It's not all the information.
Yeah, I mean, they were beautiful looking maps. They looked terrific.
Yeah.
Okay. Does anyone else have a question they'd like to ask while we've got Bill? Bearing in mind it's later in New Zealand than it is here for us in Australia.
About people wanting to work in Indigenous spaces, wondering if you had any advice about. Yeah, look, I think the yeah, and Hans is also getting about one Maori about that. I'll talk about that as well. Yeah, look, Indigenous spaces. Yeah. I mean, we work in Indigenous spaces all the time, and many of us, have families intermarried into those Indigenous communities as well. So and have children of those Indigenous communities. So yeah, look, it's really important that people know who you are, where you stand. You always have to introduce yourself, but the big thing is we're not there to say what should be done. We're just there to help out. Yeah. I think more and more it's not a. I think history's always been a contested space, and archaeology is a contested space as well. But I think if you treat gently and with wisdom and listen to what people have to say, you always get much better results than charging in and trying to impose what you think's right. That's my personal philosophy anyway. Hans, Mr. Bader,
Yeah, speak to
yeah,
me.
yeah. Hi, Hans. Yeah, look, but yeah. There was a killing there, and that has been said as one of the reasons why the killing of basically when somebody dies on a site, it becomes tapu, which basically means sacred, and the French were putting a fishing in this sacred place. That's one thing. I think also it's a bit more. My feeling is a bit more complicated than that. I mean, you can imagine two ships full of 400 people, all mainly men, all turning up on a place which has got resources are a bit tough. And not only that, it's a bit like having a couple of giant spaceships land in your backyard, giving out laser guns or whatever, and so everybody wants stuff. And so other people from the surrounding area came into the bay, which exacerbated tensions. Also, there's also some people started seeing, did a ceremony with Marion, putting a headdress on him and proclaiming him as a special person, a rangatira. So all those things, I think the tapu one is one thing, but I think it was a sort of a building up of tensions that took a while, and that was just the last straw, really. So yeah, that's my reading of the situation, Hans. Someone else said something. Sorry about. Sorry, I missed that last.
I might actually want, if you don't mind, sort of add a little bit from sort of my point of view, sitting in Te Maki Makaurau, looking up to the Bay of Islands. The musket wars. I mean, first of all, the Bay of Islands was in the early whaling days, probably the only really big place in the Southern Hemisphere where the American whaling ships could fill up the stores, which means they needed a lot of potatoes and potato growing. And that was definitely one of the sort of causes for Ngāpui then with the muskets coming down to what where Auckland is today, the
Yes.
Makimapaurau, and we've just been working just 2 days ago on Mokoiapa. Mokoiapa was the defining battle in that area, and from the oral traditions, several thousand people got killed, 300 got taken prisoner, brought back to the Bay of Islands and killed over there. The end result was that Auckland was essentially, people left it, went down to Waikato, which was a Tainui, a very strong tribe that did not get attacked by Ngāpui. And when Governor Gray came in looking for a nice place for a capital, he found a beautiful area, and practically no Maori there, very few Maori there, and that is essentially why Auckland is where Auckland is today.
Yes.
So it has essentially these links going. The Bay of Islands has these links that sort of impacting the whole country, and where we are today and what we're doing today.
Yes. I mean, I think that because these early explorers came into the Bay of Islands, people witnessed the power of the musket. In fact, the first musket war, if you want to call it that, happened in the Bay of Islands in 1772 when the French took a power on. So and so they definitely became really, really important, and it gave people a sort of there was an arms race for muskets, and that arms race for musket impacted upon our history greatly.
I would actually, if you don't mind, Bill, say something else. What always sort of what I think is quite important, with going back to the navigation as such, and I think the really defining difference between Polynesian navigation and the European navigation, which is sort of based on a lot of the mathematic principles that come through the Arab world into Europe. It's the narrative, sort of Polynesians essentially creating a shape of the world, including the sea world, the sea landscape, through the narrative. And that's the same as you can see also on land, that the ara, the pathways, they are not sort of measured in distance, kilometers and direction, but they are essentially a narrative that relates to ancestors or to events or something like this. And I think that seeing the world in the narrative rather in what is more or less a mathematical equation is
I
the
agree.
real difference.
I'm just going to show you a slide there, Hans, which I think explains it beautifully. Hopefully you can see that. But here we have the mathematical model of the world, where we can see all these lines here, and then here we have this is Tuplai's chart of the Pacific, which starts from the center.
You have to share your screen, mate.
Ah, okay. Sorry, I thought I had. Sorry.
Thanks.
Yeah, wait there. Can you see that?
Yeah.
So here you can have the mathematical model, which is Hans is talking about, where you've got the meridians of longitude here, and latitude here, and it's dividing the world up. And here we have a map that was drawn by Pouhere for Captain Cook, and here we have the ship in the middle. And these are not these are like pathways in which you go, and that's the narrative of how you understand that map. So totally different ways of viewing the world, but it's again, I think those two models tell us how people are viewing the world and as Hans said, narrative is the important part about that, is how to explain that, and pattern recognition, and all those other feedback mechanisms that you use. Yeah.
There's another question there in the chat, Bill.
Oh,
related
okay.
To the iron smelting.
Oh, okay. I didn't quite see that one. Could you just repeat the question, please?
Eleanor, are you there? And you might want to read out your own question.
I am here.
Hi.
I don't know if you guys can hear me.
Yeah,
Yep.
we can hear you.
Perfect. So kia ora, Bill. My question was, with the probable iron smelting site, aside from the drainage line, how did you know to do further testing with the metal detector in that location? Was it indicated on the map where that was located, or?
Yeah, there was three things. The first thing was the map. The second thing was that there had been a excavation down in Fiordland of a it was ship. It was called the Endeavour, but it wasn't the Endeavour that we association with Captain Cook in 1792 by Ian Smith, and it was pretty much the same dimensions and size. And so what we did is we did a bit of experimental archaeology. We made a forge using the same dimensions and size, and used it. And what we did is when we hit our hammer, we measured where the spoil from the hammer went. We set up a sheet, and so then we knew that where the spoil should be, and we should be able to tell if the smith was a left-hander or a right-hander, depending on which way the material went. So we went back there with an iron detector, knowing what the scatter of iron should look like when we hammered the iron by using experimental archaeology. So when we went back, we put the metal detector on and got the same results. So we haven't excavated it, but we're 99% sure that that's there. Oh yeah, and we excavated a field forge at Brown Spa. Thank you. Kia ora, Hans. Yeah. So that's how we did it, Eleanor. Yeah, Eleanor, sorry. Yeah, there have been LiDAR surveys of the area. The LiDAR we have is not particularly good at the moment. It's quite coarse. But yeah, and we did fly LiDAR over the Mangahawe site, which was it didn't really twist the dials really. What would you say there, Hans? You were there. You were involved with the LiDAR. What did you think about it?
I think because the bush in the background is really dense, it was quite difficult to get enough data on the ground to get a high resolution model. But in the open area, we have done that all with photogrammetry and the drone. So we have a good model of that one. But again, in the area where the French were, which is on the other side of the island, it's totally overgrown. So we did years ago with Andy a Fluxgate gradiometer survey in it, and we had a few people from DOG working for about 3 or 4 days just to get the undergrowth cut out that we actually got in with the Fluxgate. And yeah, I would be quite interested when I have spare time to actually come up and take both the GPR and the Fluxgate over the area that you think is the forge. That would be
no, sure. The invitation's there. One of the issues we have further along that site is not only was the French there, but it was also used as a camping site for boaties for the last 100 years. So, there's 100,000 bottle caps and tin cans of baked beans, which makes it a bit hard as well.
Yeah, and I think when we did it back with Andy, we got a couple of pits dug, but I think these were sort of treasure hunters that were after the bottle that was said to be left behind by the French, but no one has ever seen that bottle.
No, yeah.
Okay, last call, people, for any questions. Okay, I think we can allow you to go now, Bill.
Well,
thank you very much for giving us an ASHA seminar.
yeah.
Much appreciated, and yes, great for those of us on the Big Island to make it across the ditch. And it sounds like there's a lot more to do in that area and a lot more to find out.
Yeah.
Fabulous.
Oh well, thank you very much, and you know, I mean, I think with all this stuff, it's a combination of different things, and I just want to acknowledge, you know, the people that worked on the site that I can see there. Hans, thank you very much. You know, Hans did a lot of work on Mangahawea and bits and pieces, and it's I would just say that there is actually there's a lot of opportunities to cross over the water sometimes. So I just encourage you to come across. Kia ora.
Great. Thank you very much, Bill.
Yep. Okay.
And thanks everyone else for attending. Keep an eye on the ASHA email list. Keep an eye on our socials. Keep an eye on our website. There'll be more announcements about the 2024 conference coming soon. And thanks everyone for attending the seminar tonight.